I've learned my lesson not to get my hopes up too much for upcoming game releases. But I realized it was usually the games from big studios with a lot of hype that brought those letdowns, and some of the best games came from the ones that flew under the radar. The games I'm going to talk about today are upcoming releases for 2024 that are perhaps a little lesser known and a little more niche than the AAA releases that I'm just getting very bored of. So in no particular order, here are a few games I'm looking forward to this year in 2024. Subliminal. Now, like I said, this video is not in any particular order, but out of everything on this list, this is probably the one I'm looking the most forward to. And I definitely plan on making a video playing through it when it does finally release. Subliminal is a first-person horror game where you seemingly make your way through these liminal spaces while being chased by some sort of entity. Here's a fun fact about my lore. I absolutely love liminal spaces so much, so that's a huge reason why I'm looking forward to this game. Subliminal combines the uncanny feeling of being alone in these oddly familiar places, almost dreamlike places, but also creates a sense of urgency to get the hell out of there before you're killed. We only really have a 2-minute trailer to go off of, so there isn't too much information about this just yet, but I am looking forward to its Q3 release, where I will definitely be making a video dedicated to playing this. Tiny Glade. A couple of weeks ago, I showed this specific building game called Townscaper. Basically, the concept of that game is to just build your own little town without any consequences or keeping score. Tiny Glade is what seems to be the fantasy or cottagecore version of that game. From the gameplay I've seen so far, it looks incredibly aesthetically pleasing and relaxing. The customization seems actually fairly detailed, as you can add fences, change the colors of walls, add windows, and a bunch more. I love the fact that when you zoom in, you almost get this effect that makes it look like you're in this tiny toy village with a shallow depth of field. I understand that some people might not want to play something so lax and want something a little bit more competitive with at least a single challenge or goal, but if you haven't tried something where you can just endlessly build and get immersed that way, I definitely recommend trying it out if it's not your usual niche. In a way, it almost looks like a really high-end app that you would find in the App Store for your phone, which is why I'm not expecting too high of a price point once it is released. The demo actually releases this month on May 30th and is scheduled to come out around the second half of 2024, so it'll sit my wish list until then. Roma. Coming in next is a game that's being made by the same people who made a game that I love called Kingdoms and Castles. And Roma is an upcoming city builder and management game that takes place in a Roman era setting. From what I've seen in the gameplay videos, it seems like while you work to build and grow your city, you'll have to deal with things like taxation, economics, and even natural disasters that could potentially damage parts of your city. Even with these low poly graphics that I have a soft spot for, there seems to be quite a bit of depth when it comes to how much you can build and the way it affects your city's citizens. It doesn't look like there'll be too much of an army building or waves of enemies coming, which could be a good thing or bad thing depending on the mood I'm in when I'm playing, because it looks much more focused on the actual city management itself. I'm really curious to see how this game holds up to the low poly city builders that come before it, but I'm sure I'll have a blast. Roma doesn't have an exact release date yet in 2024, but I'll definitely be playing it when the time comes. Norland. Norland is a game I have pretty high expectations for, and there is an actual release date for it being July 18th of this year. And unlike a few others on this list, there's actually quite a bit of gameplay footage and screenshots already released, probably because of that pretty soon release date. From what I can gather in the release information, you'll be taking control of a noble medieval family and its followers. It seems each family will have their own set of skills and possibly even a skill tree. It also seems each family will have a specific member that is better at specific tasks, like being taskmaster, scribes, and warriors. I quite literally think of Game of Thrones and the Lannisters when I first read that. Every family is going to have their own Tyrion or Jaime. Taking good care of the peasants in your village results in higher loyalty, which I'm sure has its benefits, but I have no idea what those are yet. I know you'll be able to command your villagers as to where to prioritize the work and when to battle. And even with all these sophisticated and complex features, once again, this game has those 2D cartoon graphics that I love, and it doesn't take itself too serious. Norland comes out in July, and I'm really excited to see how it turns out. The Plucky Squire. Finally, the last game on this list is the Plucky Squire. Something that stands out immediately when I see screenshots or gameplay of this is that it alternates between 2D and 3D gameplay. And from what I've seen, you're able to jump right off the pages of a book to navigate the levels, and it seems that will play a factor in solving some of the puzzles you have to complete. If you've ever played any of the older Zelda games, it may remind you of that. Not to mention, I'm a sucker for the quirky, whimsical music that it has in the gameplay footage, and of course, the cartoon art style. In some of the gameplay footage, it shows you have to lift the pages and move things around that don't seem like you'd be able to in order to progress. I really like that. It looks like you have to think outside the box with a lot of the levels. And the best part is that it'll be available on just about every console and PC when it does release, so it'll be pretty accessible for everyone. I'm definitely looking forward to the Plucky Squire. Anyways, these are just a few of the games I'm looking forward to that are coming out this year. You may have noticed the pattern that none of these were AAA titles or particularly well-known titles. Like I said in the beginning, I've just had too much fun lately with these indie or lesser-known games, so naturally that's what I'm looking the most forward to. I hope you enjoyed this list, and be sure to check out all these games on Steam. Thanks so much, make sure to poke the subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one.